Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're at when you're watching this. Welcome to another episode of One Door at a Time. I am your host, Jason Richardson. I'm the Vice President of the Home Service Companies for Security National Life, and it is my distinct pleasure to have with us today Mr. Michael Packett. Michael, how are you doing today?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
Well, good deal. So Michael has been with us for, I guess, almost 8 years, and 2 of those years he was the agent of the year for the home service division. So the guy knows how to write a little bit of insurance, and I guess he started maybe when he was 10 in the insurance business. Because how long did you tell me you've been in the business, Michael?
I'm going on 43 years now.
23 years.
And I was 10. Yes, that's right. I was 10
That's
years
right.
old.
Yeah, you're almost 10 when you got started. There you go. And so 43 years. So I know in 43 years you've seen a lot of different things, obviously a lot of changes to the industry, and I'm sure that we'll talk about them at some point today. But let's get started by just telling everybody a little bit about yourself and how you got into the home service side of the business.
Okay. Well, I'm Michael Packett. Again, it's my name. I've been in the business for almost 43 years. I was actually 25 when I started in the business. I was born and raised in Virginia and on a farm in a small town called Warsaw, Virginia. It's on a little peninsula in the northern neck of Virginia, but that's where I grew up. Well, I went off to college, and after college, I came back to work on the farm. I worked for my dad on the farm, and then I worked for my brother, who was a building contractor there in Virginia as well. I was helping him build houses, and really had never thought anything about. I mean, life insurance never even crossed my mind, as far as selling it. But I had a really close friend of mine. He's one of my best friends, who was working for a local debit company there in our town, or the town next to us, called Tappahannock, Virginia. And he had been there for a few years, and he was making, just excellent money. He was making a whole lot more money than I was working on the farm and building houses, about twice what I was working actually. And he had done so well, he decided to go out on his own. His father was going to set him up in his own agency. So he went out on his own, and before he left Southland, Southland Life Insurance Company was the name of the company that he was working for. They've been bought out since then. But he asked me if I wanted to go and apply for his job. At that time, there were no open debits at that time because there were good jobs, and they were considered better than average salary, and the districts were always full of agents. So I kind of reluctantly, went and applied for the job, and I got the job as an agent with Southland. And honestly, for the first few months, I really didn't like it much. I was used to getting my hands dirty. I wasn't used to having to put a tie, a coat and tie on every day to go to work. But and I didn't like it much. Really, I went there for the money initially, and I
Sure.
guess that's why I didn't really, like it that much. Because if that's your motivation, if that's your only motivation, that's not really. It shouldn't be your only motivation. But when I delivered my first death claim check,
Hmm.
is when I realized that, this really is, there's something to this. We're actually really helping people and making a good living at the same time. There was an older couple on my route, after I started with the company, Mr. and Mrs. Sanders. I remember them. And I was, like I said, I was about 25 years old. I was 25 years old. I was painfully shy. So I didn't ask too many people, for the sale. And Mr. Sanders, I inherited the route. Mrs. Sanders had been with the company for years and years, and she had been paying a policy on herself. But he refused to take a policy. But for some reason, he took a liking to me. I think he felt sorry for me because I was so shy. And he asked me for a policy, and I wrote it that day. But about a month later, he died. And he actually wasn't in bad health when he asked for the policy because all his vitals were fine, but he just happened to die of a heart attack. And I'll never forget, the day that I delivered that death claim check. It was a $10,000 check, which was a good bit of money back then. And I delivered that check to Mrs. Sanders, and the way she looked at me. and she gave me a hug and she thanked me for writing her husband that policy. And really, I had nothing to do with it. He asked for the policy. I just wrote it. But that did it for me, I think.
Yeah, and
Of
you actually kind of beat me to the punch because at some point I figured this would come up because I think that overall, having talked to different people that have been in the business for a long time, it's almost unanimous that first death claim check was the experience that really put them into the business, right? Because I don't think anybody grows up and their friends and their teacher at school ask them, "What do you want to be when you grow up, little Johnny?" And Johnny says, "I want to be a debit man." I don't think nobody says that, right?
Not at
Uh,
all.
and back then, when you first got started, the companies that were marketing through the home service method were a lot more plenteous, right? So there were a lot more of them around, and they were definitely full because they were good jobs. Having said that, I think you would agree, but if you don't, feel free to disagree. But just because you weren't getting your hands dirty doesn't mean that you weren't working hard each and every week, right?
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because I've hired people, and I'm sure you've seen them come into the offices in the past, and they come in the office and they come from a manual labor type job. And I told them, hey, if you put 40 hours worth of work into seeing people and asking them for referrals, for sales, etc., you won't have to worry anything about eating. I mean, you'll have more than what you need. And it never fails. I say it never fails. It mostly holds true that they never give the same amount of labor and effort because it's a different kind of work. You know, it's not you don't punch a clock. You don't have somebody glaring over your shoulder all the time. You know, you have to be disciplined in this business because there's a lot of times that and I'm sure you feel the same way. You know, you have a bad day, it's kind of rainy, cold outside. You know, I think I'm going to go to the house. So we have to continue to see the next call and knock on the next door. But that first death claim experience is what put me into the business as well. And the benefit to somebody like yourself who's been in this business for 43 years, you've paid an awful lot of death claims, I'm sure. So,
Probably more than the company would like for me to have to pay. No,
well,
no,
it seemed like last year I was paying out at least one death claim a month. And, I got to thinking, I was talking to my wife about it actually. And I said, I've been in this business for almost 23 years now. And some of the customers I'm dealing with today are some that I dealt with all those years ago. And I told my wife, I said, I've never really had this problem before. And so my wife is generally very quiet, not assuming. And she says, well, you got to think about it. You're getting older. That means they're getting older. And so we are, just statistically speaking, more likely to see more and more of that. So it is important to get out there and see those new people. So let's talk about that for a minute, Michael. I know that you're actively still out there writing with us, Security National. And so you're out there seeing the new people. And I would assume that a lot of what you do today isn't necessarily door knocking, but you're asking for referrals to get to the next house. Would that be correct?
oh yeah, exactly. And the fact that I have been out there for so long, and I think you mentioned it. I know you mentioned it on your interview with Greg because I listened in on it. Was a nice interview, but I have so many customers where I had their grandparents insured, or in one case, I had their great grandparents insured. So I have these young men and women who are grown now with children of their own that they call me, and I'm not an insurance man in my area. I'm actually the insurance man in my area. So they
Mm-hmm.
call me, and I get a lot of referred leads. I get a lot of people just calling me and asking me to come by and see them. I wrote a policy. I think I told you yesterday, I wrote 4 applications in a house. It was from an existing customer who needed some insurance on her grown children. So I went out and wrote the children. Um, but I also do ask, in every house I go into, I ask for, is there anyone in the family, or one question I do ask, and I got this from my very first sales manager. He asked this in every single house he ever went into. He would, before he left, he'd say, if you had to write a policy on anyone today, who would it be? And they always give an answer, and they don't always necessarily, we don't always get a sale, but sometimes we do, off just that simple question.
Yeah, it's one of the fringe benefits of sticking with something, and in particular, we're talking about the home service business. And I would also argue that a traditional, or what we refer to as ordinary, life insurance agent does not get the same benefit that a home service agent gets from being in the business the same length of time that you have. So you've established relationships by delivering death claim checks, making those extra calls, being the man, as you referred, the debit man in the neighborhood. They're seeing you get in and out of your car. They're seeing you with your hat. Have you been wearing your hat lately?
I'm looking at my hat right now.
So you get in and out of the car, and they're like, okay, there goes the debit man, there goes the insurance man. But by virtue of that, you've been able to be successful and not have to continue to buy leads, not have to knock doors and do things the hard way like you did when you first started. So I did want to point that out. And if you want to talk about that or expound on that, we will. But in this day and age where there's so many agents and companies that see collections, physical collections, as a detriment, it's just extra work that, we would just save ourselves so much time, so much money, so much effort if we would just put everybody on billing and bank draft and be done with it, all those, pesky little collections. But I argue that they're really missing the bigger picture, because the bigger picture is the relationships you're establishing with those people, like you mentioned, so that you're not having to pay for leads, because leads, depending on the amount or the type of lead they could range from $5 to 20 to $50. And mail-in leads, you have to mail thousands of them out just to get a very small percentage back. And of that small percentage, even a smaller percentage actually even want to buy insurance. Some of them just lonely and want to see people. So I would argue that the home service distribution method is what has allowed you to be successful. I'm sure that you could have been successful in the ordinary side of things. It would just been a little harder to kind of cultivate those relationships. And so if you want to kind of talk about that or expound on that, feel free to do that.
Yeah, I do have, quite a few customers that do pay, by debit cards. I have a company that I use it. I can actually take their payments over the phone.
Right.
But I don't want all my customers paying like that. I mean, certain ones do want to pay that way, and they prefer that, and that's fine. But because I have a big book of business, I don't know if I could physically go out and see every single one of my customers. But I want to see, a percentage of my customers. You
That's
want
right.
to be, and I look at every house I go into as an opportunity to help the customer, to possibly make another sale, or at the very least, get a prospect, and also continue to develop that relationship. But yeah, I think the debit business is by far. I've never run well, I'll take that back. Years ago, I bought some leads, and it didn't work well for me at all. And I don't have the patience for it. It's just
Yeah, and the thing about it is, I worked for a company one time that said they were still home service, but they really weren't collecting anything anymore. And people wondered why, like they called it an agency because that's so much more sophisticated. But on the agency, they were like, well, how is it that you're writing more stuff, and I was still writing people on bank draft? But how are you writing all those people more than the other people to have the same or more people on their agency than you do? And it was because some people on my agency um, did not do well when they switched them all over to billing. Okay. So I would get that list where somebody had not paid, say, by the middle of the month, and I would go out there to those people and say, Miss Jones, is there a reason why you haven't paid your insurance? It might be because she had to get a new set of tires. It might be because somebody replaced a business. In either case, I'm still the guy that's out there. It's a lot less laborious than what it was when we had to collect weekly premiums. So I think there's a way that people can work smarter and not harder. There are ways to adapt with the changing times. You mentioned debit cards. We don't collect weekly premiums anymore. Um, and so we still survive that. But to your point, I think it's just natural human nature that it's out of sight, out of mind. But if you can establish some kind of routine where there's some that you collect, I have customers that know that Jason's going to come one time. That's it. This is the one shot you got to pay me if you want to pay me in person. After that, they're going to have to cash at me or some other form of payment, and or mail it in even. So that's the great thing about technology. So we're utilizing technology to not get away from this business, but to do this business better. So I think technology doesn't always have to be an ugly four-letter word, but it can be a positive thing too at times. Um, oh, sounds like a fire.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Fire truck. I live on a busy corner in Atlanta, so. But to that point, even the customers that I take their payments from debit cards every month, I still every week, at least one time every week, I go through my entire book of business, on the computer, and with a fine tooth comb, every single customer, and certain ones I call. So I still, at least once a month, the ones that I just take their payment over the phone, I still call and talk to them on the phone. I
Mhm.
take them calendars. So I still try to keep that personal touch and relationship with them, even though I'm not seeing them every month.
Yeah, you got to. I years ago I was had wrote this customer up, and she was the last person like on that day's route. I mean, she was way out there, and she run a daycare, so I had to make it out there at a certain time during the day to not interfere with kids going home or be there during nap time, all that kind of crazy stuff. And it was just a pain, to be honest. It was just a pain. So I told when I got promoted, I told her that I was getting promoted. I said, we need to put you on bank draft. She said, okay, well, I hate it. I mean, it was like I hurt her feelings that I didn't want to see her anymore. And so I put her on bank draft. Well, I hired another agent to be on that route. And so we went out there because I knew she was in the process of fixing to get married. So I waited a little while and I figured by the time we got out there, she would be married by that time. So I got out there and she said, oh yeah, we got married. Uh, and she said, I took this other policy out. I said, what are you doing taking a policy out with somebody besides me? And you know what she said to me hit me like a ton of bricks when she said, Jason, it's been a year since you've been here. If I was waiting on you, he wouldn't have anything. Now, what you were saying about your customer before that was hugging you because you wrote her husband's policy. I've been there before, but I've also been on the other side of it before where I didn't do what I should have done. And it really hits home then, that how important what we do is it. And sure, we get paid well for what we do. So I'm not
Well,
whatever, but past that, the thing that keeps us in the business when things don't always work out our way are those things that, hey, if I don't do it, who's going to do it?
and that's so true. And I've had a similar experience to what you had. And this wasn't too terribly long ago. And this is when I decided I really need to keep in touch with the people that I don't see.
Mhm.
Where one of my best paying customers, and she pays like clockwork. She pays on the 15th of every month. I take it off her debit card. She has 4 or 5 family members that she pays for. So it's a big premium. And she's such a good customer, I was sort of taking it for granted. And after about a year, she called me up and she said, Mr. Mike, she called me Mr. Michael. She said, Mr. Michael, I just called to see how you're doing. Are you okay? And I told her, I said, I should be calling you. But it really made me think, and that I need to keep better
Well,
contact with.
you don't ever know. You don't ever know. I mean, if for those of you who are not as familiar with the home service business, we're not servicing doctors, lawyers, and the like. Okay, we're dealing with people that are in lower, middle to lower income. Okay, and one thing can train wreck somebody's whole life. These aren't people that have got extravagant 401ks for the most part, or lots of money to be able to handle when things go up. So, eggs or whatever goes up, tires blow out. All of a sudden your insurance is on the chopping block. So you have to continuously remind people that how important it is to be able to be covered when somebody passes away, and that. So that's how important what we do is. We're dealing with people that need us, right? So, and some of these people are older. I know a lot of my customers have gotten older as I've gotten older, but these people that are older, they might not have family to see. So seeing the insurance man is kind of therapy of sorts, right? They want you to sit down and sit a while and talk and carry on. I know I've got a customer that she only pays me like $29, I think. And but she's carrying on and stuff every time I'm there, and she'll talk about her husband that's been dead for 10 years or more, every time I'm there, because I was there when he was there, right? And so this is a way that she, can kind of, as the children are busy and life is busy and nobody's coming by to see her, and we become more parts of the family than we do a bill collector. I've had my kids' pictures sit on some of my customers' mantles before because they feel like they've known them. I mean, I've been in this business for this year will be 23 years, and my oldest son's 25. So they've seen them all grow up because they've heard me talk, that parent talk that you do. But it's important that what we do, and at Security National, unlike some of our other competitors out there, Security National is dedicated to the home service business because we see the value in it. Not only is it profitable to the company, but it's definitely a needed service. And so we're, home service through and through in our division. And, we roll out various training things that you can see here on YouTube where you might be listening or watching this interview. You can see training manuals that pop up in videos every other week. So if you aren't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, feel free to do so. The link is in the description below. But so Michael, you've been with Security National for 8 years, as we mentioned earlier, and you started with nothing, right? So
Yes.
yeah, so you had your existing agency, and so I know some naysayers out there will say, well, Michael, he knew a lot of people. Yeah, but Michael still had to go out and see those people. And as long as it was in their best interest, say, hey, if I can help you in the future with your insurance, let me know. I'm sure he went out and seen some people like that. And they're like, yeah, well, Michael, you sold me this policy 10 years ago. It's still good. And he said, okay, but if you need any more insurance, let me know. So it's not as easy as sometimes people make it out to be when you've been experienced, but I would grant that it is a little bit easier maybe. But talk about that building process of your agency, because that's not some small feat. How large is your agency now?
It's a good solid 12,000 monthly premium.
Yeah. So with our average policy size being somewhere around $30, I mean, y'all can do the math as to how many policy holders has Michael handling. That's no small feat. You know, people say that can't be done. It's too hard to do. Yet Michael, just 8 short years ago, went out and over the course of the 8 years has grown it. And so talk about the process of that. You know, you're starting with zero and saying, hey, because you came from another company that was a captive company. You know, your income was limited. You didn't, you know, you were charged for things that you didn't write yourself, and those type of things. So talk about when you came on board with Security National, and especially like that first year or two, as you were really building your block of business then. Talk about that process and what was going through your mind on that.
So, well, one thing I really, to begin with, one thing I really love about my book of business is every single case of business on that book I wrote myself, and I have a personal relationship with each person on the book. But another thing about Security National is it's an agent friendly company, and the company pays good renewals. I mean, much better than in this industry, uh, much better than probably 99% of the companies out there, and maybe even 100%, but they pay good renewals. So every case of business that you write, every month when they pay that premium, you're going to get that renewal as well. So it was, for me, it was kind of fun to watch it grow and see how every month. Of course, you get your payment up front for the new policies as well. But every month you see your agency grow, your debit grow, and your income grows every single month. So the more you write, the more you put on the books, the bigger your debit is, your book of business is, then the more of a steady income you're going to have.
Right.
While continuing to write new business. So it's just um, it's a lot of fun to me. To me, it is fun. It's just to watch it grow and to keep it, to maintain it. Like I mentioned before, I go through my book of business with a fine tooth comb at least once a week. I even look at the lapse list of the people who have lapsed, and I try to contact them. People's circumstances change, for the worse, and then they can change for the better, just like they did for the worse at one time. So as people, you can go back out there and maybe reinstate or possibly rewrite, if that's all they can do. But yeah, it takes time to build a book of business, but it doesn't take that much time. I mean, a good year can really and you can make money with, from day one is the thing. You can make a good income from day one, starting from zero. But as you grow that book of business, then you've got that cushion.
That's right. Yeah, and that, I guess that's the biggest thing that separates us from the ordinary side of the business, is that typically in an ordinary company, the renewals are much smaller, and the first year commission is much larger, but the trade-off is the renewals are much smaller, and normally they're limited to a set number of years. Whereas as long as you're servicing the business that you wrote or that you're assigned to, you're getting paid service pay. And so that's a huge deal, to Michael's point, because a lot of insurance companies, you might see the hype and the flash, and they say, "Oh yeah, man, I made $300,000." Yeah, but what'd you make the next year when you weren't writing as much? Or what happens? Michael has gotten to the age, if y'all were doing the math earlier, that he's not out there beating the streets as what he was when he was 25 years old. I mean, he's still out there working, but I would imagine it's safe to say he's not out there beating the streets like he used to. So, but he can do that, right? Because he's built things up to this point. And that's where anybody wants to get in life, whether you're in the home service business or just in life. You want to get to that point to where, okay, I can make that choice. It's not something that I've got to go out there and write all these policies just to pay the light bill. Now I get to get to have some fun in it too. So, Michael, these podcasts are really designed for experienced agents, for inexperienced agents, or just anybody that might be interested in getting into the home service business. Last year, we've had the largest year in the division's history of new people had never been licensed before getting into this business. And so while many companies are shuttering their doors and continuing to try to figure out ways to cut costs, we at Security National are continuing to grow. So having said all that, what would you tell if you could send one message out to the experienced agent and then one message out to the inexperienced agent on tips on how to be successful in this business, what would they be?
Well, in the first place, you have to enjoy what you do. I mean, I'm a firm believer. If you don't like something, just go find something else.
Sure.
You have, but then again, at the same time, you're not always going to like something right from the beginning. You got to look for things about it that you enjoy, and then really kind of expound on that.
Mm-hmm.
But number one, you have to like what you do. Another thing that's so important is you mentioned it before. A lot of the homes that we go into today, we're the only professional that really steps into their home,
Right.
during the month. So we have a responsibility to these people to treat them allow them some dignity, because some of the people we deal with, they're not allowed a whole lot of dignity around the world. So
Right.
we can do that, and they'll appreciate it, and they'll be loyal to you for that. But we also have a responsibility to be a model for their kids. And so treating people right is treating your customers with honesty, with integrity, to do the business right. For experienced agents that have been in it for a long time, I see people. I've got a brother-in-law who worked for a different company, recently retired. He was he's my age, and and he asked me, Michael, when are you going to retire? And I've even had customers ask me, when are you going to retire? My answer is, retire from what? Retire from what? I love what I do. I enjoy it. What would I do if I retired? But the thing is, we have the best retirement in the world. If we can build a decent book of business, and as long as I can remember my customers' names,
Right.
as long as I can maintain, good health, reasonable health, I plan to keep working. There's no reason for me not to, because I enjoy it, and I'm making a good living at it. I'm able to help people, and to enjoy my life. I really enjoy first thing in the morning. I can't wait. I mean, I know this sounds crazy, but it's true. I can't wait to get out of the bed, have my breakfast, bring my cup of coffee to my desk here, and get to work, and pull up my first I read my daily text. That's the first thing I do every morning.
Yeah.
But for that, I get to work, and I enjoy. I thoroughly I enjoy this business more now than I ever have.
Sure.
So
Yeah,
long.
that takes work, and the that's that's definitely good advice for the new agent or the experienced agent, is to enjoy what you do. I mean, the value that you have in bringing the death claim, the value of knowing that, hey, if you had not made that extra back call, not pushed Miss Jones to go ahead and pay her insurance when she didn't really want to, paying out that claim, they wouldn't have had the money that they needed at the time they needed it the most when they lose a loved one. I mean, there's value in that. And you're right. What are you retiring from? I hear so much in this world today that people hate their jobs. They're having this massive silent quitting out there, where people just walk off their job and don't go back to work for, I guess they got pockets of money. I don't know. But regardless, I think the underlying thing that people are missing is because people hate what they're doing so much, because they don't see the value. The money might be there, but as you've mentioned, and I think I've mentioned as well today, it's not all about the money. The money's nice, and we all got to have money to pay our bills, right? But it's not all about the money. So if they make it all about the money, they're looking for the first moment to get out of retiring. Whereas, like with Michael, and I feel like when I get to that point myself, I'd be much the same way. It's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to be bored to death. I'm allowed flexibility. I don't have to go in and punch a clock 9 to 5. And, if I need to take off, and Michael wants to take off and go down to Savannah or something like that, guess what? He gets to do so. He doesn't have to call anybody and say, hey, can I please take off? Can I please have off? We're going to dock your pay because you don't have enough vacation days. Just none of that. And so that's the great thing about working in the insurance business. Certainly, it has its challenges. So I'm not painting things with rose colors, but it is definitely one of the benefits of being in this business. Well, Michael, I do appreciate you agreeing to do this interview. And of course, as always, we appreciate you here at Security National and what you've been able to do in the time that you've been here. Any parting words that you want to leave any of the listeners or watchers?
Well, if you're wanting to get into business, then give it certainly, if you want to, give it a shot. It's a good business. It's a good way of life, and it's something you can do for the rest of your life if you enjoy it. But if you don't want to get into business, if you then don't. Just if you don't like it, go find something else to do. If you're in the home service, if you are in the business now and you've got a good book of business, a good debit, and maybe some ordinary companies out there trying to pull you away, my advice is don't do it. You got the best of both worlds right here. So I guess if I had any parting words, just enjoy what you do. Be honest and forthright with your customers. Treat your customers with dignity, and you can be successful at it, and work hard.
So, sounds much like the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would have them to do unto you.
Sure.
So, thank you. If you've been listening or watching this today, thank you very much for spending your time with us. And if you're watching this on or listening to this on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button and hit the subscribe button, bell notification, so you don't miss anything like this or other videos that we drop in the future. Follow us on Facebook and visit our website, snlhomeservice.com, if you're interested, and click on careers, and you can be connected with somebody who can talk further with you. Might be of interest to you, might not be of interest to you, but either way, we'd love to talk to you about it. Again, thank you, Michael, and thank you, everybody, for listening. And until next time, happy selling.